The email notification pinged softly on my laptop, a barely audible chime against the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant city sounds filtering through the closed window. Just another piece of digital noise in the quiet landscape of a Tuesday evening. Usually, I'd let it sit, another unread item in the ever-growing pile I'd tackle sometime around Thursday, when my tolerance for digital clutter finally snapped. But the subject line snagged my attention, pulling it out of the background noise. Monthly payment confirmation ACCT ending 8472. Chloe's account. The one she called her Freedom Fund, or sometimes her Future Goals stash, always nebulous, always separate. Curiosity, that insidious little itch, started prickling at the back of my neck. We shared most things, or at least, that was the operating assumption. Joint account for the rent, the bills, the groceries, the mundane glue holding our shared life together. My salary, admittedly the larger one, covered the bulk of it. That was just the arrangement, unspoken but settled. Her income, more fluid from her project-based design work, trickled into the joint account, sometimes a decent chunk, sometimes barely enough to cover her share of the takeout. But this separate account? That was strictly hers. Off-limits. Her little financial sovereignty zone. Still, buried deep within our shared password manager, the digital Fort Knox I'd insisted on for emergencies, like if one of us got hit by a bus, lay the credentials. This didn't feel like a bus-level emergency, not yet anyway. More like noticing a single loose thread on an expensive sweater, the kind you know you shouldn't pull, but your fingers are already twitching. Logging into her bank portal felt wrong. Vaguely illicit, like flipping through someone's private messages. Easy, Liam, I coached myself, trying to tamp down the unease. It's probably nothing. Confirmation for that online course on sustainable design she was babbling about. Or maybe she finally pulled the trigger on that ridiculously overpriced ergonomic chair that looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. The page loaded, all crisp lines and sterile bank formatting, rows of transactions laid out like little digital soldiers reporting for duty. My eyes scanned down the list. Standard stuff mostly. Transfers to her checking account for walking around money. A few hits from her favorite online boutiques, a payment to the yoga studio. Nothing earth-shattering. Then I saw it. Near the top, dated the 1st of the month. A recurring monthly transfer. Not a piddling amount either. Exactly $1,150. The recipient description was brief, almost clinical. Transfer to M. Davies. M. Davies. The name echoed faintly in the cluttered hallways of my memory. Where? Marcus. Of course. Marcus Davies. Her friend from work. The guy who populated her workplace anecdotes, usually cast as the slightly hapless, overly chatty colleague. Oh, Marcus? She'd said more than once, usually accompanied by a slight eye roll or a dismissive flick of her wrist. He's sweet, but honestly, kind of a disaster zone. Needs his hand held through every project. Another time. He's basically my work husband, you know? Knows all the office gossip, complains constantly. It's exhausting but harmless. Harmless. That was the word she always used. The office mascot, the platonic confidant, the guy who was definitely not a threat. Certainly not someone you'd be wiring over $1,000 every single month like clockwork. My brain felt like it had short-circuited, smoke pouring from the logic centers. $1,150. It was such a specific, non-random number. Why that exact amount? An old bill? A shared investment I didn't know about. My mind desperately grasped for straws, anything plausible. Then, a colder, more precise thought cut through the static. I minimized the bank window and navigated through the meticulously organized folders on my laptop, a system I maintained because, let's face it, Chloe's idea of filing was shoving papers into the nearest drawer. Household admin. There it was, lease_agreement_unit4b.pdf. I clicked it open, scrolled down past the legalese. Monthly rent, $2,300. Due on the 1st. My stomach plummeted. $2,300. Divide that by 2, $1,150. No. The denial slammed into me first, a reflexive defense mechanism. It's a coincidence. It has to be. But the date stared back at me from her bank statement, mocking my naivete. The 1st of this month. The 1st of last month. The 1st of the month before that, stretching back a full 6 months. 6 months. She had been covering this guy's half of his rent? While living here in our apartment? While I paid the mortgage-size rent payment for our place, covering far more than my technical half because my income was steadier? The initial confusion morphed into a sickening wave of disbelief. Why? The question hammered relentlessly inside my skull. Why would she do this? Was Marcus in some kind of deep trouble? Gambling debt? Medical bills? Was she loaning him money secretly, too embarrassed to tell me? My mind, conditioned to find logical solutions, scrambled for a narrative that didn't involve betrayal. Maybe he was being evicted, and she was helping him out, planning to tell me later? It sounded thin, even to me. Because the alternative explanation, the one lurking just out of focus, was so much simpler, so much uglier, and it changed the entire landscape of the last year, maybe longer. It meant the foundation I thought we were standing on was quicksand. I leaned back, the cheap faux leather of my office chair groaning in protest. The apartment, usually a comfortable haven, suddenly felt alien and hostile. The air seemed thick, charged with unspoken secrets. Chloe was out. Drinks with Sarah and Jess, she'd announced earlier, planting a quick, almost perfunctory kiss on my cheek before breezing out the door, leaving behind a faint cloud of the expensive perfume I'd bought her for Christmas. Girls' night. Right. How many of those nights, I now wondered, had involved a detour? How many urgent, work crises, requiring late nights at the office had actually been something else? How deeply entwined was Marcus, the harmless work husband, in the parts of her life she kept carefully curtained off from me? Like watching a Polaroid develop in reverse, the past 6 months started replaying in my head, but with a disturbing new filter. The small inconsistencies, the moments that felt slightly off but I'd brushed aside, they now pulsed with significance. Those times she'd angle her phone away abruptly when a text came through, murmuring, "Just work stuff." The vague, evasive answers when I asked how her day went. "Ugh, same old, deadlines and annoying clients." The sudden defensiveness, bordering on hostility, if I ever casually asked about Marcus after she'd mentioned him. "God, Liam, are you serious? He's just a friend. Can't I have male friends without you getting weirdly possessive? Stop being so insecure." It was textbook deflection, classic gaslighting 101. Make the accuser feel guilty for even asking the question. And like a prize idiot, I'd backed off every time. Because I trusted her. Because confronting the alternative felt like pulling a pin on a grenade in our living room. It was easier to accept the flimsy reassurances, to maintain the comfortable illusion. Or rather, the illusion I had mistaken for comfort. I remembered a specific conversation, maybe 3 months ago. She'd come home late, looking stressed. Mentioned Marcus was going through a really rough patch. Financial trouble, she'd hinted, keeping the details deliberately fuzzy. Concerned, playing the supportive partner role I thought was expected, I'd said something like, "Hey, that sounds tough. If he's really struggling, maybe we could spot him a little cash. A short-term loan, just till he gets back on his feet." Her reaction was immediate and sharp. "Oh God, no! Absolutely not. It's his mess, he'll figure it out. It's really not our problem, Liam. Let's not get involved." Our problem. The irony was thick enough to choke on. It wasn't our problem because it was her secret project, funded by her separate account, while I carried the weight of our actual shared financial obligations. The hypocrisy was stunning. She demanded near total transparency from my end, questioning my occasional after-work drinks with colleagues. Who was there? Any women? Wanting access to my calendar, expecting detailed reports of my spending. Yet her own professional life, particularly the Marcus-shaped corner of it, was a black box shrouded in convenient fog and vague pronouncements. This wasn't just a double standard, it was a whole separate rulebook written in invisible ink. The financial pressure I'd been under lately suddenly felt 10 times heavier. The extra hours I'd been putting in at my own job, chasing a promotion that wasn't just about ambition but about easing our collective burden. We were supposedly saving for a down payment on a small condo, trying to escape the rent trap. That goal, once a shared dream, now felt like a solo mission I hadn't realized I was on. Chloe knew about the stress. We'd talked about it endlessly. She'd performed the motions of sympathy, the concerned frowns, the shoulder rubs, the murmurs of, "I appreciate you so much, working so hard for us." Appreciated it so much that she was secretly diverting a significant chunk of cash that could have gone towards our future, to subsidize her work friends' lifestyle? The sheer, unmitigated gall of it. The profound disrespect. It wasn't just the money, though the thought of over $1,000 vanishing each month into that black hole made my stomach clench. It was the fundamental betrayal. The calculated, sustained deception. Every shared meal, every movie night cuddled on the sofa, every conversation about future plans over the last 6 months, all of it felt retroactively poisoned, overlaid with the greasy film of this secret she was actively maintaining. "He's just a friend from work." The phrase cycled relentlessly in my head, each repetition dripping with more sarcasm. It's the universal get-out-of-jail-free card, isn't it? The oldest trick in the book. Establish the harmless platonic shield, the orbital beta, as some guys call it, the non-threatening male friend kept just close enough for validation or as a backup plan. Only Marcus wasn't just orbiting, he was apparently receiving direct financial life support, courtesy of my girlfriend, funded indirectly by me. What was the endgame here? Was this some kind of emotional affair escalating into financial entanglement? Was she keeping him on retainer, a backup boyfriend waiting in the wings for when she got bored or decided I wasn't meeting some unspoken need? It fit the pattern, didn't it? The cold, pragmatic calculus of the modern dating scene I was increasingly waking up to. Always keep your options open. Never fully commit when there might be a shinier object just around the corner. Loyalty? Partnership? Quaint relics of a bygone era. Much more efficient to hedge your bets. Let the stable, reliable guy handle the boring stuff, rent, bills, emotional support, while you invest your energy, and apparently your cash, in the more exciting, albeit messy, side project. My internal monologue, the one I usually keep locked down tight, was now a raging torrent of bitterness and cynicism. "This is what you get, genius," the voice sneered, dripping with contempt. "You saw the little flags, the inconsistencies, but you chose to look the other way. Wanted to be the cool, trusting boyfriend. Played the nice guy. And surprise, surprise, nice guys finish last, holding the bag while someone else gets the benefits. Welcome to the goddamn club, population, you." There was a sliver of dark, twisted humor in the sheer absurdity of it all. The almost comical audacity of paying another man's rent while living with your partner. It wasn't even a sophisticated betrayal. It was clumsy, blatant, like leaving a signed confession on the kitchen table. It was a flashing neon sign broadcasting one clear message. My connection with this other person, whatever it is, takes priority over my respect for you and our relationship. I minimized the bank window, the damning evidence seared into my brain. No need to dig deeper, to search for incriminating texts or emails. The financial trail was enough. The why behind it, whether it was a full-blown affair, a one-sided emotional crutch, or some bizarrely codependent rescue mission, had become irrelevant. The core fact remained: she had actively, consistently chosen to deceive me over a significant period. She had prioritized her clandestine arrangement with him over the partnership she supposedly had with me. That was the only data point I needed. The expected surge of rage didn't materialize. Not yet, anyway. That might come later, a delayed detonation. Right now, it was replaced by something colder, sharper, a profound, almost serene sense of clarity. It felt like stepping out of a thick, suffocating fog into stark, unforgiving daylight. The ambiguity was gone. The path forward, previously obscured by hope and denial, was now brutally, unequivocally obvious. There would be no dramatic confrontation. No tear-soaked accusations across the dinner table. No demands for explanations that she would inevitably twist, deny, or drown in a flood of manipulative tears. No giving her the stage to perform her well-rehearsed victim routine. You're blowing this way out of proportion, Liam. It's not what it looks like, I swear. How could you even think that? After everything? Don't you trust me? Oh, I could hear the script already, could practically see the wounded expression she'd perfect. She was a master craftsman of emotional manipulation, turning any criticism back on the accuser, making them feel like the villain for noticing her transgressions. No. I wasn't stepping into that ring. I wasn't playing her game by her rules. Not this time. The rules had just changed. I opened my email client, the cursor blinking expectantly on the blank screen. Navigated to my contacts, found the email address for the building management company, good old Progressive Property Solutions. Pulled up the lease termination clause from the PDF I still had open. Section 7.b, 60 days written notice required prior to lease end. Perfect. I typed out a short, formal, almost sterile email. Subject: Lease Termination Notice Unit 4B. Body: To whom it may concern, pursuant to Section 7.b of the lease agreement for Unit 4B at our address, please accept this email as formal notification of our intent to vacate the premises upon completion of the current lease term on lease end date. Please advise on move-out procedures. Sincerely, Liam, my last name. I attached the lease agreement PDF for good measure. Standard. Impersonal. Undeniable. Effective. Then, the final step. I composed a new email. Addressed it to Chloe's personal account. Subject line, forward, Lease Termination Notice Unit 4B. In the body of the email, I simply forwarded the message I'd just fired off to the management company. Nothing else. No commentary. No questions. No accusations. No bitter recriminations. Just the cold, hard, immutable fact of the decision I had made, delivered digitally. I hovered over the send button for a fraction of a second, a moment of finality. Then I clicked it. The email vanished into the ether. The cursor blinked on the empty screen again. I methodically logged out of her bank account, meticulously cleared my browser history, leaving no trace of my discovery, and closed the laptop lid with a quiet click. The silence in the apartment felt different now. It wasn't empty, it felt purged. Cleansed of the cloying weight of illusion and deceit. I stood up, walked over to the kitchen sink, and poured myself a tall glass of cold water. My hands were perfectly steady as I lifted the glass. My breathing was slow and even. Inside, a silent hurricane was raging, a maelstrom of hurt, betrayal, white-hot anger starting to finally simmer, and underneath it all, a strange, grim sense of liberation. But the exterior? Calm. Controlled. Resolute. Sometime later tonight she'd come home. Probably humming off-key, maybe slightly flushed and overly cheerful from her girls' night. She'd kick off her shoes, drop her bag, maybe complain about Sarah's latest dating drama. Eventually, probably while scrolling through her phone before bed, she'd see the email. The subject line alone would stop her cold. Confusion would ripple across her face first, followed quickly by dawning panic, and then, inevitably, white-hot anger directed at me. The calls would start. Then the texts, a rapid-fire barrage of questions, demands, accusations, maybe even threats disguised as pleas. She'd try to talk. To explain. To bargain. To manipulate her way back into control. But the phone would remain silent on my end. I wouldn't be answering. Let her try explaining the situation to Marcus. Maybe he had a spare room going? After all, she'd already effectively paid the deposit and first month's rent for him somewhere. The thought brought back that flicker of dark, graveyard humor. Yeah. Let them figure out their next steps together. My participation trophy in this particular relationship game was being revoked, effective immediately. I glanced around the living room, our living room. Filled with furniture we picked out, art she liked, rugs I paid for. It didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a meticulously dressed stage set for a play that had just been abruptly cancelled mid-performance. I finished the water in 3 long gulps, rinsed the glass under the tap, and placed it precisely into the top rack of the dishwasher. Order amidst the chaos. Small acts of control. Right. Time to start packing. Not just a weekend bag to crash at a buddy's place while things cooled down. No. Time to systematically dismantle my life here. Sever the connections. Wipe the slate clean. Seeing the world as it actually is, not through the rose-tinted filter of hope or willful ignorance, it's a harsh awakening. Leaves a permanent, metallic taste in your mouth. But the clarity it provides is absolute, almost blinding. You suddenly see the intricate patterns of behavior, the hidden strategies, the relentless undercurrent of self-interest that drives so many interactions. You realize that the very stability and provision you thought were your strengths, the bedrock of the relationship, can easily be perceived and utilized as mere conveniences by someone whose primary focus is elsewhere, a comfortable home base from which to launch other expeditions. You learn, definitively, that just friends is often, perhaps usually, just grade A bullshit. And you internalize the hard truth that sometimes, the only way to win a rigged game is to refuse to play. Just walk off the field. Forward the lease termination notice and keep walking. The inevitable cascade of notifications from her, the pings, the buzzes, the desperate calls, would soon start. But now, they would just be digital noise. Background static I could finally, truly, and justifiably ignore. My focus had narrowed to a single point, executing a clean exit, rebuilding my life on solid, uncompromised ground, and maybe, just maybe, learning to trust that nagging voice in my gut much, much sooner next time. Because it had been whispering warnings for months, hadn't it? Little nudges, fleeting doubts I'd dismissed as insecurity. I just hadn't wanted to listen. Now I heard it loud and clear. Crystal clear.